Coffee, black coffee.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Very happy to welcome here today the European Commissioner for Home Affairs, Ms. Ylva JOHANSSON, who is visiting today Tallinn and Narva in her outreach. And we are today live on EBS as well as on ARR. Please, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here in Estonia and in Tallinn and in a few hours in Narva. Of course, the main purpose for my visit is the ongoing aggressive war by Putin in Ukraine and the terrible consequences it has on the humanitarian situation, and that also causes a lot of refugees that have to flee Ukraine. So far, we have seen 3.3 million Ukrainians fleeing from Ukraine to the EU countries. Almost double the numbers are internally displaced in Ukraine, so it's likely that a number that has to flee Ukraine will rise even further. So far, all of those that have come to the European Union, the biggest number has entered into Poland. 2 million refugees have come to Poland, half of them children. I visited myself the border between Poland and Ukraine, and it's really impressive to see how citizens, volunteers, NGOs, civil society, local authorities, border guards, national authorities are doing an unprecedented action of solidarity towards the refugees, opening their homes, welcoming them. We see that. I've also visited the border between Romania and Ukraine. So exactly the same. I visited Slovakia. We have seen this here in Estonia, exactly the same pattern, how people are in this unprecedented situation showing solidarity in practice, welcoming people that are fleeing. And I think this is really showing the strength of the European Union in this situation. So the figures, 2 million has come to Poland, 600,000 to Romania, 270,000 to Hungary, 220 to Slovakia. Here in Estonia, 25,000, as what I was told. In Czech Republic, 250,000. This is also not a neighboring country, as you know, to Ukraine. Some of these are going further on to other member states, but still it's really unprecedented. And what we experienced in 2015-2016 was less than 2 million refugees that came to the whole European Union during 2 years. Now we've seen 3.3 million in less than 4 weeks. So, of course, it's put a lot of pressure onto societies, and this is what I would like to discuss here together with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Interior, how the European Commission can support Estonia in this situation. Of course, funding is important, but also other aspects will be raised. When I'm here, I continue also with the refugees. I came right now from the internal security service, where I had an opportunity to discuss a bit on the security situation in Estonia. And the experience we have so far is that of those arriving from Ukraine, around half of them are children, as I told you, mainly women and children. Very few so far have applied for asylum, extremely few numbers. Quite a number are now applying for the Temporary Protection Directive. I will come back to that. We have seen very few unaccompanied minors being registered. We have seen few reports of trafficking. But I have to tell you that this is really a concern. We know that we have a lot of orphans in Ukraine. We know that we have children being that are being born by surrogate mothers that have not been picked up by their parents. There is a huge, huge risk of vulnerable children being trafficked or being victim of false adoption. We know from experience that when we have big flows of migration, there is always people taking advantage of the situation and using and take women and vulnerable women and children as a victim for trafficking. And that's why the European Commission, we have activated our network of anti-trafficking coordinators. I know that local national police are really working on this right now, and I think we have to stay very vigilant how to avoid children and women being victims of trafficking, how we can make the utmost to protect children and to give some normality to the children that are now coming as refugees, being able to go to childcare, to school as soon as possible. This is really important. The Commission will present a communication on Wednesday on the different rights that are linked to the Temporary Protection Directive and how this can come into reality in the different member states. And the Temporary Protection Directive has been activated for the first time ever. And I must say that the Ministers of Interior in the Council, the Justice and Home Affairs Council, really acted in a very, very strong unity and urgency to activate this Temporary Protection Directive that has never ever been used, even though it's been existing for 20 years. And we took that decision unanimously among ministers, and I think that was a really, really strong message of the unity. And now we have to make this temporary protection come into life in different member states. I also, when I am here, I had the opportunity to visit my agency EU-LISA headquarters here in Tallinn. They are doing a great work when it comes to the protection our borders, to make our external border system the most modern one in the world, actually, and this is what they are working on. And I'm also looking forward to go to Narva in a few hours to also visit the external borders, the most eastern part of EU external borders, and to have the opportunity to meet both with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Interior to have in-depth discussions with them on this topic. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the surrogates, because the practice of surrogacy in Ukraine was kind of dubious according to European standards anyway. But now those women are arriving to Europe, and for example, according to Estonian law, if this woman pregnant with somebody else's child, handed over this child to another couple, she would be human trafficker as well. Are there any ideas of finding the solution for this quite extraordinary and, well, a bit shady issue?
Well, I have to work together also with other commissioners in this aspect on the legal basis, but I think the most important right now is to rescue the children and to make sure that they will be protected and to be taken care of in an orderly way. I'm pretty worried about the situation where these orphanages can be the staff can leave because of the dangerous situation, or the children can be actually victims of bombings or things like that. I know that evacuation is going on, and that is where I work very close with my colleague, Commissioner Janusz Lenarčič, who is responsible for the humanitarian aid and the corridor out of Ukraine.
Oh, no, Estonian television. You told about the huge risk of human trafficking, and such risk can only be avoided if the situation is being managed. If the countries bordering Ukraine are overrun by refugees, it is very hard to manage the situation overall, among other things, human trafficking risks. So is there a plan how to redistribute this very awful word if it comes to human tragedy, but still, is there any plan how to redistribute those refugees among many countries, even though they don't border Ukraine directly? And second question, if there is such a plan, when will it start? How to help these countries that actually border Ukraine and are under pressure of refugee influx right now?
Many questions, and they are good ones. First, it's important to avoid or to be able to trace people that are arriving in the European Union. Registration is key, and member states are doing the registration, but I have to admit that our EU-wide registration system like the Eurodac, that is meant for migration, is not really applicable at this time because they are not irregularly arriving and they are not asylum seekers. Because most of them are coming visa-free traveling. So that means that member states are now setting up their national registration, and the task now for me is to make sure that we have a European-wise registration that can be linked to each other. And this is important for the possibility to trace where people go, so that children, for example, don't go missing. We have a solidarity platform that have connections on a daily basis, more or less, but a week, physically twice a week, where member states together with agencies come together and share information. The information they share is, for example, we are ready to receive more people in this area. We have reception capacities available here and here, so that we can direct and redirect people to areas where they can be properly received in a good way. This is what we're going to scale up to make sure that not all pressure is on the countries that are neighboring Ukraine. We need also people to go further on to other member states. I'm reaching out also to third countries on this. For example, Canada that already said that they are ready to take an unlimited number of Ukrainian refugees. We reach out to US, to UK, and this is something I'm going to discuss tomorrow, for example, with the Canadian minister directly, how we can facilitate also those that would like to go to a country outside European Union. So it's necessary that we have the possibility of a fair share of the burden to receive these people. They have, and as I said, an unprecedented warm welcome, but there are limits, of course, on how many people you can receive in a specific country in a specific time, especially when it comes to, for example, the capability for children to go to school, to childcare, and so on. And yes, of course, we need funding, we need practical support, and this is also something that is being discussed in this solidarity platform, more or less on a daily basis, what kind of support that is needed to the countries most affected.
Does that mean that, for example, in Romania, Poland, or the Baltic states, we will see the situation and people who are already here, who have been organized into schools or kindergartens, are again put on planes to send them away, for example, to Canada, to Germany?
Well, I must say that I don't think that forcing people to go somewhere else is not a good solution, but we should try to use the information to help people to take the right decision. And also there's a lot of transporting companies in the European Union that are offering free transportations for all Ukrainian refugees so that people will be able to go to different member states to help in this situation. We have a special situation with Moldova, that is a small poor country, and they have received already more than 300,000 refugees from Ukraine. And more than 100,000 of those are still in Moldova. And there we also have some pledges from member states that are doing the resettlement from Moldova to their country, their own country, of the Ukrainian refugees. But at this stage, the Ukrainian citizens have the right to move freely in the European Union, and we should help them to do so.
Okay, thank you. As we see, as you also mentioned, that not many Ukrainians ask for asylum, and many of them actually seem to be eager to return home as soon as possible, which we don't know when it will be possible, and they want to be ready to return to Ukrainian society. Have there been any ideas of facilitating, for example, Ukrainian school system all over Europe so that they could keep their children as Ukrainian as possible?
Yes, first, the reason why very few are applying for asylum is partly because we have activated the Temporary Protection Directive, so it's not necessary. Most of them have the right to stay for 90 days on their Ukrainian passports, and then if you apply for Temporary Protection Directive, you can stay for 1 year, and that could also be prolonged, and so it's not necessary to apply for asylum, and that's actually the reason to use it, because it's a much quicker procedure than the asylum procedure. But you are right. Most of the Ukrainian refugees I have been speaking to, and when I talk to volunteers, they say the same, that most people would like to go back as quick as possible. But it's necessary, not at least for children, to have some normality and not trying to go, start going to school, to childcare, to some kind of normal life, even though, of course, it's difficult in these times. So I think it's important to prepare for staying for a while. We don't know how long the war will continue. We don't know how quick it will be for people to go back afterwards either, because actually Putin Kremlin are destroying a lot right now in Ukraine. But to your concrete question, yes, we are working on that. So we are setting up, for example, remotely, so that Ukrainian teachers can teach online, so that can be used by schools all over the European Union, even if they don't have Ukrainian teachers right there. We are also looking into to provide Ukrainian books, school books, things like that, so help the member states that could have both, maybe a combination of the Ukrainian schooling and some of the schools, normal school that is already ongoing in each member state.
You mentioned that registration of Ukrainian refugees is important, but at the same time, at least by the end of last week, Estonia was one of the few countries that was actually separately registering people who are intending to stay here and who are in transit. Do we actually know how many people are still in Poland, for example, because Ukrainians are able to move freely? They're talking about 2 million, but are 2 million really still in Poland, or is it just a number that affects Poland, and some of them are already somewhere in Western Europe or Northern Europe?
And what is the question?
The question is, how well do we know how are the Ukrainians moving across Europe, because there is no good registration procedure?
No, we don't know that well enough. And I think part of that, I'm sending a delegation from my service to the most affected member states. And what they tell us is that they all do the registration, but it's no central hub for this registration. So we might need to set up a system to connect the different kind of registration to be able to have a better picture. So yes, that's one of the vulnerabilities.
You mentioned already a little bit about transport. I just wanted to ask, is there some more general plans about how to organize this transport of people? Because as I understand, a lot of the refugees, even though they have the right to move freely around Europe, a lot of them still don't have any resources. They really don't have any money and to organize the transport themselves to other countries. You mentioned that some private companies, I understand, are organizing it. Is there some more general plans about the transport?
Yes. First, maybe you're aware we have a EU website with all the information to the Ukrainian refugees, where you can get access to all the information in different member states, which kind of transport companies that will offer free transportation where you don't need to pay if you're a Ukrainian refugee. So this is an important web page that we need to spread the information to all people that are coming, that they can have it there. Then we have the Solidarity platform, where we are coordinating these issues. And this is an area where I think we need to do more. We've been very much focusing on the acute situation where they arrive. Now it's time for people also to move on to other countries. And I think it's also important to see how the burden sharing, so that member states should take their share a bit here to step in to welcome people and also to tell them where it's good to go to be welcome, where there are capacity, where, for example, to make sure that children have the access to go to school as soon as possible, and also the possibilities for adults to have a job. We are now trying to set up a hub or website, an EU talent pool. There are some embryos already in Romania and Portugal for the Ukrainian refugees to be able to match people that would like to have apply for a job, and employers that are searching, and especially those companies that really would like to encourage Ukrainian refugees to come and work for their companies. So this will also help, I think, to find your right place in the European Union when you look into jobs and possibilities for school for your children.
Countries bordering former Soviet Union have large population of Russians or Russian-speaking people. Many Russians and Russian-speaking people in this area might be Putinists. Do you see a danger of tensions or possible instability, bear in mind that the refugees from Ukraine meet Russians, among those might be many Putinists?
Well, you can always put a lot of risks, but I would like to rather stress the opposite. This was what I discussed just 1 hour ago at the Internal Security Service, and I was convinced that also there is a good possibility that this could be managed in an orderly and good and peaceful way. So I think we are talking, the EU member states, we are democracies, we are working, we are living together, even with different language and different communities, and I think that we should build on that.
So far, 3.3 million Ukrainians have come to Europe, but is there an estimate at EU level how many more are yet to come in the coming weeks?
It's very difficult to predict, but I should say that there will be many more millions to come.
Yeah. Did I understand right that you mentioned that there have already been some human trafficking cases of children? Can you talk more about this?
We have very few reported ones, but we have quite alarming reports from police that see this risk. We have it from NGOs. We have it from women's organization inside Ukraine, where women, they know that women have left, have gone missing. So, and we know from experience that this is very, very often the case. So we should not wait until we have proof of a lot of trafficking, because then it might be too late. So that's why I'm putting this. We have to have really awareness raising on this. Of course, the big majority of those that are picking up people on the EU side of the borders are there to help. genuinely and in solidarity. But there are always some criminal elements that try to sneak in and to use this opportunity. They say we are offering shelter for women and children, and then that turns into something else, and people are in a very vulnerable situation. So this is, I know in many member states the police are going to check every car that is waiting for people, and I think it's the awareness raising here is extremely important. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.